Good evening, and welcome to The Gentle Scientist. Tonight, we embark on a journey into one of the most mysterious and alien environments on our own planet, a place that remains, even in our age of exploration and satellite imagery, less mapped and less understood than the surface of distant worlds. We are setting out toward the deep ocean, pushing through bands of water that cool and darken with every meter, leaving behind the familiar realm of sunlight and color, and entering a world that operates by entirely different rules, where creatures have evolved forms so strange they seem borrowed from science fiction, where the very concepts of light and darkness, predator and prey, even what a body should look like, have been reimagined by millions of years of adaptation to conditions we can barely comprehend. The ocean covers more than 70% of Earth's surface, and yet we have explored only a tiny fraction of its depths. The average ocean depth is over 12,000 feet, and below 1,000 feet, sunlight fades entirely, leaving a realm of perpetual darkness inhabited by creatures that have never seen the sun and never will. These are not the familiar fish of coral reefs or coastal waters. These are animals shaped by pressure, by cold, by darkness, and by scarcity into forms that challenge our understanding of what life can be. And tonight, we will meet these creatures, understand their adaptations, and perhaps most importantly, understand why they unsettle us so deeply, why they trigger something primal in our psychology, and how that initial fear can transform into wonder. Our journey will take us slowly, gently, through each layer of the ocean, pausing to observe the creatures that have made their homes at depths that feel more like another world than part of our own. We will see how their bodies change as pressure increases, how eyes adapt to darkness, how mouths evolve for rare opportunities, and how life itself persists in places that seem designed to prevent it. Before we begin, if you find that these explorations help you drift towards sleep, or simply appreciate the strangeness and wonder of our world, I invite you to like this video, to subscribe to The Gentle Scientist, and to share your thoughts in the comments below. This community grows through your support, and I am grateful for each of you who chooses to explore with me tonight. Now, let your breathing slow. Let your body settle into comfort. Let your mind open to the possibility of worlds within our world, hidden beneath miles of water. Now, let's begin. Imagine standing at the edge of the ocean, looking out at water that catches the afternoon light in shades of blue and green. The surface seems friendly, inviting even, but beneath that shimmering skin lies something extraordinary. The ocean is not one world, but many, stacked like invisible floors in a building. Each layer has its own temperature, its own light, its own rules for survival. The first zone, the one we know best, is called the sunlight zone, or the epipelagic. It stretches from the surface down to about 200 meters, roughly the height of a 60-story building. Here, light pours through the water in golden shafts. Photosynthesis happens. Phytoplankton bloom in green clouds. Fish dart in silver schools. Dolphins arc through the blue. Sea turtles drift past forests of kelp. This is the ocean of documentaries and postcards, the ocean that feels alive in a way we recognize. But even here, at the bottom edge of sunlight, something begins to shift. The water takes on a deeper blue, then a twilight indigo. Colors start to disappear, leaving everything tinted in shades of blue and gray. A fish with brilliant red scales would look black down here, invisible against the dimming light. This is where the transition begins, where the ocean starts to whisper that the rules are changing. Below 200 meters, we enter the twilight zone, the mesopelagic. This is where things begin to feel different. The light that remains is faint, a ghostly glow filtering down from above, never strong enough to read by, never bright enough to cast a shadow. It is the light of deep dusk, perpetual and dim. Here, photosynthesis becomes impossible. Plants cannot grow. The entire food web shifts, becoming dependent on what drifts down from the sunlit world above. And here, the creatures begin to look strange. Their eyes grow larger, trying to catch every photon. Their bodies turn silver or black or transparent. Many develop the ability to produce their own light, glowing softly in the gloom, like stars scattered through the water. Hatchetfish hang motionless, their bodies flat as coins, their undersides glowing to match the faint light from above, erasing their shadows. Lanternfish, small and unassuming, carry rows of lights along their bellies like the windows of a ship at night. The twilight zone is vast, stretching from 200 meters down to 1,000. That is 800 meters of dim, cold water where the temperature drops steadily, where pressure builds with every meter, where food becomes scarce. It is a place of waiting, of watching, of conserving energy. Predators here do not chase. They drift and lure and ambush. Life moves slowly, deliberately, because every movement costs energy that may be impossible to replace. Then, at 1,000 meters, the last traces of sunlight surrender. We cross into the midnight zone, the bathypelagic, and darkness becomes absolute. If you were here without a light, you would see nothing. Not dimness, not shapes, nothing. The black is total, a void that presses against your eyes. And yet, this darkness is not empty. It flickers with bioluminescence, tiny bursts of blue-green light that bloom and fade like fireflies. A jellyfish pulses past, glowing faintly. A squid releases a cloud of luminous ink. A fish flashes a pattern along its side, sending a message to others of its kind. The midnight zone extends from 1,000 meters down to 4,000. It is cold here, hovering just above freezing. The pressure is immense, hundreds of times greater than at the surface, enough to crush any creature not built to withstand it. Food is desperately scarce. What drifts down from above, the marine snow of dead plankton and fecal matter, is so sparse that many creatures must wait weeks between meals. And so the animals here have evolved patience. They hang motionless in the black, their metabolism slowed to a crawl, waiting for the faint chemical signature of food. Here, you begin to see the true strangeness of the deep. Anglerfish, with mouths full of needle teeth and glowing lures dangling from their foreheads. Gulper eels that are mostly mouth, their jaws unhinged and enormous, their bodies trailing behind like thin ribbons. Viperfish with fangs so long they curve outside the mouth, even when closed. These are creatures shaped by scarcity and darkness. Every feature an adaptation to a world where food is rare, and encounters with other living things are rarer still. Below 4,000 meters, you enter the abyssal zone, the abyssopelagic. This is the deep plain of the ocean, vast and flat and cold. The pressure here is staggering, over 400 times that of the surface. The temperature hovers just a degree or two above zero. The darkness is so complete that many creatures here have abandoned eyes altogether, relying instead on touch, smell, and the faint electrical fields generated by living things. The abyssal zone stretches from 4,000 meters down to 6,000, covering more of the Earth's surface than all the continents combined. It is a desert of sorts, a place where life exists in low densities, scattered across miles of empty water and muddy seafloor. The creatures here are often small, gelatinous, fragile-looking. Sea cucumbers crawl across the bottom, filtering mud for organic particles. Tripod fish stand on elongated fins like stilts, facing into the current, waiting for food to drift into their mouths. Amphipods, relatives of beach-dwelling sand fleas, scurry through the sediment, scavenging whatever they can find. And then, deeper still, there is the hadal zone, named for Hades, the Greek underworld. This is the realm of the ocean trenches, the deepest places on Earth, plunging from 6,000 meters down to nearly 11,000 in the Mariana Trench. The pressure here exceeds 1,000 atmospheres. The hadal zone is not a continuous layer, but a series of deep scars in the ocean floor, isolated trenches separated by thousands of miles. Each trench is its own island of extreme conditions, and the creatures that live here are among the most specialized on the planet. Snailfish, pale and gelatinous, swim slowly through the blackness. Amphipods grow larger here than anywhere else, some reaching nearly a foot in length. They swarm over any food that reaches the bottom, whether a dead fish or a whale carcass, consuming it with startling efficiency. What makes these layers so distinct is not just depth, but the compounding effects of darkness, cold, and pressure. Each zone creates a different set of challenges, a different puzzle that life must solve. In the sunlight zone, the challenge is competition. There is plenty of food and light, so success comes from being faster, smarter, or better hidden. In the twilight zone, the challenge shifts to efficiency, how to see in dim light, how to avoid being seen, how to make the most of declining resources. In the midnight zone and below, the challenges become existential. How do you find food when there is almost none? How do you find a mate when you might encounter only a handful of others in your entire life? How do you survive pressures that would destroy most living tissue? The answers to these questions have produced creatures that look to our eyes like something out of nightmares or fever dreams. But to call them monstrous is to misunderstand. They are not aberrations. They are perfection, each one a masterpiece of adaptation to conditions we can barely imagine. The ocean's architecture, these invisible layers of light and darkness, temperature and pressure, has built a gallery of life that ranges from the beautiful to the bizarre, from the comforting to the unsettling. And the deeper you go, the more the architecture of darkness bends life into shapes that seem impossible, until you realize that down here in the deep, these shapes are the only ones that make sense. The ocean is not one world. It is many-layered like sediment, each one stranger than the last. And we have only just begun our journey. Color, as we experience it, is nothing more than light. The red of a rose, the blue of the sky, the green of leaves in summer. All of these are wavelengths of light bouncing off surfaces and into our eyes. Color is a conversation between light and matter. And when the light disappears, so does the conversation. In the deep ocean, this conversation ends gradually, color by color, until all that remains is darkness and the creatures that have learned to vanish within it. At the surface, sunlight arrives in a full spectrum. White light, which is actually every color combined, penetrates the water and begins to scatter. But water is selective. It does not treat all colors equally. The ocean absorbs light based on wavelength, and it does so in a particular order, one that determines which colors disappear first and which linger longest in the fading light. Red goes first. Within just 5 meters of the surface, red wavelengths are almost entirely absorbed by the water. A diver carrying a red object will watch it turn gray, then black, as they descend. By 10 meters, red is functionally extinct. Orange follows soon after, absorbed by 15 or 20 meters. Yellow fades next, disappearing by 30 meters down. Green lingers a bit longer, but by 100 meters, it too is nearly gone. Only blue remains. Blue light penetrates deepest, sometimes reaching as far as 200 meters in the clearest ocean water. This is why the twilight zone glows faintly blue, why photographs from submersibles often look tinted in cold, deep indigo. Blue is the last color to surrender, the final whisper of the sun before darkness takes over completely. This selective absorption of light has profound consequences for the creatures living in these depths. Color, which serves so many purposes in the sunlit world, bright plumage for attracting mates, warning colors for poisonous prey, camouflage patterns for hiding in reefs, becomes useless. In a world where red light does not exist, being red offers no advantage. In fact, it offers something better: invisibility. Many deep-sea creatures are red, bright, vivid red, the kind that would make them stand out like alarm signals in shallow water. Crimson jellyfish drift through the twilight zone. Ruby red shrimp hover in the midnight zone. Scarlet fish, with translucent fins, patrol the dark. To our eyes, under artificial light, they look striking, almost garish. But in their natural habitat, where red wavelengths cannot reach, they are invisible. They absorb what little blue light exists and reflect nothing back. They become shadows, ghosts moving silently through water that cannot reveal them. The giant squid, one of the most famous deep-sea dwellers, has reddish-brown skin. When it rises into the twilight zone to hunt, it becomes a phantom, its enormous body vanishing against the deep blue backdrop. Only its eyes, huge and reflective, might catch a stray photon. The red coloration is not decoration. It is erasure, a way of removing oneself from the visible spectrum entirely. But red is not the only strategy for disappearing. Some creatures have taken the opposite approach. Instead of absorbing light, they have eliminated their pigmentation altogether, becoming transparent. Glass squids drift through the mesopelagic like living windows. Their bodies are so clear, you can see their internal organs suspended in what looks like empty water. Salps, barrel-shaped tunicates, form long chains of transparent bodies that pulse slowly through the current, nearly invisible, except for the faint outline of their edges. Larval fish in the twilight zone are often transparent, their developing skeletons visible as delicate line drawings inside clear flesh. Even some adult fish maintain this transparency. Eerily fish have transparent, fluid-filled heads that allow their tubular eyes to rotate inside, looking upward through a dome of living glass. To see one is to feel as though you are looking at an X-ray, at something not fully formed, caught between existence and absence. Transparency works because it allows light to pass through rather than be absorbed or reflected. If you cannot be seen, you cannot be eaten. But transparency has limitations. Some organs cannot be made transparent. Eyes, for instance, must absorb light to function, so they remain visible, dark spots floating in otherwise invisible bodies. Digestive tracts, filled with food, show up as dark lines. To solve this, some transparent creatures have developed reflective coatings around their organs, tiny mirrors that scatter light in multiple directions, diffusing their visibility. Then there are the creatures that have embraced darkness completely: black fish, black squid, black shrimp. In the midnight zone and below, where no sunlight penetrates at all, being black offers the ultimate camouflage. Black absorbs all wavelengths of light, including the blue-green glow of bioluminescence. In a world where most light is produced by living things, where glowing lures and flashing signals are the only illumination, being black means being a void. The ultra-black fish of the deep sea have taken this strategy to an extreme. Their skin is among the darkest biological materials known, absorbing more than 99% of light that strikes them. Under microscopes, their skin reveals a specialized structure, layers of pigment-filled melanosomes arranged in precise patterns that trap light and prevent it from bouncing back. Even when illuminated directly by a submersible's lights, these fish appear as flat, featureless silhouettes, holes cut out of reality. Fangtooth fish, with their nightmarish teeth and bulging eyes, are draped in this ultra-black skin. Pacific black dragons, sleek predators of the bathypelagic zone, are so dark they seem to absorb not just light but depth itself, appearing two-dimensional even in three-dimensional space. This blackness is not merely the absence of color. It is an evolved technology, a material engineered over millions of years to erase the wearer from the visual field of both predators and prey. But there is another color strategy in the deep, one that seems counterintuitive at first: silver. In the twilight zone, where faint blue light still filters down from above, many creatures are silver on their undersides and dark on top. This is called countershading, and it is a form of camouflage that works by canceling out shadows. When light comes from above, it creates a silhouette. A fish swimming in the water column casts a shadow downward, making it visible to predators below. But if the underside of the fish is reflective, it can bounce the dim light from above back downward, matching the brightness of the surrounding water. From below, the fish becomes invisible, its shadow erased by its own reflective belly. Hatchetfish are masters of this technique. Their bodies are thin and blade-like, their undersides covered in silvery scales and dotted with bioluminescent organs called photophores. These photophores glow at precisely the right intensity to match the faint downwelling light, adjusting in real time as the fish moves through different depths. The effect is extraordinary. From below, a hatchetfish disappears completely, its silhouette dissolved into the background glow. Swordfish and some species of tuna use countershading in the upper twilight zone, their dark backs blending with the darkness below when seen from above, their silver bellies blending with the light when seen from below. It is a strategy borrowed from the surface world where penguins and sharks use the same technique, but in the deep, it is refined to perfection, calibrated to the specific quality of light that exists at each depth. Pasting the reach of the last blue photons, countershading stops working. There is no light from above to match, no silhouette to cancel. Here, the color strategies become binary. Be black to hide in the dark, or be transparent to become nothing at all. Some creatures combine strategies: black bodies with transparent fins, red bodies with transparent tissue between the organs. Each species has found its own solution to the problem of visibility in a place where being seen often means being eaten. The disappearance of color in the deep sea is not a loss. It is a transformation. Color becomes strategy. Red becomes invisibility. Black becomes armor. Transparency becomes escape. The ocean has stolen their colors one by one, starting with red and ending with blue. And in response, life has learned to dress itself in darkness. These are not random mutations, but precise evolutionary responses to the physics of light and water. But color is only one way life has adapted to the deep. Vision, too, has been reshaped by the darkness. In the beginning, eyes were simple things, patches of light-sensitive cells that could tell the difference between day and night, between shadow and sun. Over hundreds of millions of years, these patches folded inward, developed lenses, grew muscles and nerves, until they became the cameras we carry in our skulls. Eyes are miracles of evolution, but they are also compromises, shaped by the world they must see. And in the deep ocean, where light becomes scarce and then vanishes altogether, eyes have been forced to make choices that would seem impossible on land. In the twilight zone, where the last photons of sunlight filter down like the memory of day, eyes grow enormous. Not slightly larger, but dramatically, disproportionately huge. The giant squid, that legendary creature of sailors' nightmares, has eyes the size of dinner plates, the largest eyes in the animal kingdom, measuring up to 11 inches across. These massive organs are not for vanity or intimidation. They are light-gathering instruments, biological telescopes designed to catch every available photon in the dim blue twilight. The swordfish, hunting in the upper mesopelagic, has eyes nearly 4 inches in diameter. For its body size, this is extraordinary. These eyes are packed with rod cells, the photoreceptors specialized for low-light vision, and almost devoid of cones, the cells that detect color. There is no point in seeing color where color does not exist. Every bit of space inside these eyes is devoted to one task: squeezing vision from near darkness. Larger eyes collect more light. It is simple optics, the same reason astronomical telescopes have enormous mirrors. The pupil, the window through which light enters, grows wider. The lens, which focuses light onto the retina, becomes more powerful. The retina itself, the screen onto which images are projected, becomes densely packed with light-sensitive cells. A giant eye in the twilight zone can detect movements and shapes in light levels that would leave a human completely blind. But size alone is not enough. Some deep-sea fish have evolved eyes so specialized that they barely resemble eyes at all. Eerily fish, also called spookfish, have tubular eyes that point straight upward, locked in place inside transparent, fluid-filled heads. These are not eyes that can scan the environment. They cannot look left or right, cannot track movement across a field of view. They can only stare up, watching the faint glow of the surface far above, searching for the silhouettes of prey swimming overhead. The advantage of tubular eyes is extraordinary light sensitivity. By narrowing the field of view, by eliminating peripheral vision entirely, these eyes concentrate their photoreceptors into a small area, creating a kind of biological spotlight pointed at the ceiling of the ocean. Some eerily species have recently been discovered to have eyes that can rotate inside their heads, allowing them to look forward when needed, but most of the time, they gaze upward, patient and still. Hatchetfish have similar adaptations. Their tubular eyes point upward, scanning for prey above them. They hang motionless in the water column, their flat, blade-like bodies oriented vertically, their eyes watching the dim blue for any disruption, any shadow passing between them and the distant light. When they detect movement, they rise quickly, striking from below where their own counter-illuminated bellies make them invisible to their target. This upward-gazing strategy is common in the twilight zone because of how light behaves. What little illumination exists comes from above. Creatures silhouetted against that light become visible, while everything below dissolves into blackness. So, predators look up, and prey either hide in the darkness below or, like the hatchetfish, evolve ways to erase their silhouettes. But tubular eyes come with a cost. Peripheral vision is sacrificed. A eerily cannot see what approaches from the side or below. It has traded a wide view of the world for the ability to see in one direction, with exceptional clarity. This is the calculus of deep-sea vision. Every adaptation is a trade-off, a choice about what to see and what to ignore. Deeper still, in the midnight zone where sunlight never reaches, eyes continue to exist, but they change in purpose. Here, the only light is bioluminescence, the cold blue-green glow produced by living things. Eyes in the bathypelagic zone are adapted not to sunlight, but to these flashes and glimmers. Many deep-sea fish have eyes that are sensitive only to the narrow wavelength band of bioluminescent light, typically between 470 and 490 nanometers, a specific shade of blue-green. The stoplight loosejaw, a type of dragonfish, has evolved something even more remarkable. While most bioluminescence is blue-green because blue light travels farthest in water, the loosejaw produces red bioluminescence. It has special light organs beneath its eyes that glow red, and its eyes, uniquely, can see red light. This gives it a private spotlight. It can illuminate prey without the prey knowing they are being watched, because nothing else in the deep sea can see red. It is like hunting with infrared goggles in a world of creatures blind to infrared. The loosejaw's eyes are large and sensitive, but they also contain a pigment derived from chlorophyll, borrowed originally from the algae the fish or its ancestors consumed. This pigment allows it to detect the red wavelengths its own body produces. It is a closed loop of predation, a secret frequency on which only the loosejaw can broadcast and receive. But not all deep-sea creatures retain their eyes. In the abyssal and hadal zones, where darkness is absolute and bioluminescence is absent, some species have abandoned vision altogether. Eyeless fish swim through the blackness, their eye sockets reduced to depressions covered with skin, or vanished entirely, leaving smooth faces that look unfinished, haunting in their incompleteness. The cusk eel, which lives at depths exceeding 8,000 meters, has vestigial eyes, tiny and non-functional, remnants of a time when its ancestors could see. The Mexican blind cavefish, though not a deep sea dweller, shows what happens when eyes are no longer useful. Over generations, eyes stop developing. The genes that build them are no longer maintained by natural selection, and eventually they disappear. In the deep ocean, the same process occurs. Eyes are expensive. They require energy to build and maintain, energy that is desperately scarce in the abyss. If they provide no benefit, they are lost. What replaces vision? Other senses sharpen. Lateral lines, the sensory organs that detect vibrations and pressure changes in water, become more acute. These are like hearing and touch combined, allowing fish to sense movement and objects nearby, even in complete darkness. Chemoreceptors, the cells that detect chemical signals, become more sensitive, allowing creatures to smell and taste the water for traces of food or predators. Some deep-sea fish develop elongated fin rays that trail behind them like whiskers, touching and tasting the water. Tripod fish extend 3 long fins and rest on the seafloor like insects on stilts, using those fins to sense vibrations from passing prey. In the darkness, the world is experienced not through light, but through pressure, chemical gradients, and vibrations. It is a world known through touch and taste, a world that is felt rather than seen. The hagfish, an ancient, jawless scavenger of the deep, has poorly developed eyes covered by thick, translucent skin. It navigates almost entirely by smell and touch, using its barbels, whisker-like projections around its mouth, to probe the seafloor for carcasses. When it finds a dead fish or whale, it burrows inside, eating from within, indifferent to the darkness, because darkness is all it has ever known. There is something deeply unsettling about eyeless fish. Eyes are how we recognize faces, how we connect with other beings. We look into eyes and see intelligence, emotion, intention. A fish without eyes looks incomplete to us, as though something essential has been erased. The smooth skin where eyes should be creates an uncanny valley effect, familiar enough to be recognizable, but wrong enough to disturb. Yet these creatures are not suffering from their blindness. They are not stumbling through darkness, lost and confused. They are perfectly adapted, navigating their world with senses we barely understand. The absence of eyes is not a deficit, it is an optimization, a reallocation of resources toward senses that actually matter in a place where light does not exist. Even among fish with eyes, the appearance can be disturbing. Large eyes, especially when they dominate the face, trigger something instinctive in us. They resemble the eyes of predators, forward-facing and intense. Deep-sea fish often have eyes that are not just large, but bulging, protruding from the skull, giving them an expression of permanent surprise or alarm. The big-eye thresher shark, though not a true deep-sea dweller, hunts at the edge of the twilight zone and has enormous eyes adapted for low light. Lanternfish, tiny and abundant in the mesopelagic, have eyes that seem too large for their small bodies, giving them an almost cartoon-like appearance that somehow reads as eerie rather than cute. And then there are the eyes that glow. Some deep-sea fish have reflective layers behind their retinas called tapetum lucida, the same structure that makes cat's eyes shine in the dark. These layers bounce light back through the photoreceptors, giving them a second chance to detect photons. When a submersible's lights sweep across the darkness, these eyes flash back, glowing white or green or gold, disembodied points of light hovering in the black. The ocean has shaped eyes into forms we barely recognize, stretched them to extremes, and sometimes erased them altogether. What remains is not sight as we know it, but something stranger, a collection of adaptations so specific, so finely tuned to darkness. Each variation is a response to the same challenge: how to perceive an environment where the most basic tool of perception, light, has been taken away. In the absolute darkness of the deep ocean, where sunlight has long since surrendered to the weight of water above, something extraordinary happens. The darkness begins to shimmer. Not with reflected light, for there is nothing left to reflect, but with light born from within living tissue itself. This is bioluminescence, one of nature's most beautiful and unsettling achievements. And in the deep sea, it is not a rarity, but a way of life. Nearly 90% of creatures in the midnight zone can produce their own light, transforming the abyss into a galaxy of living stars, each one pulsing with purpose. Each glow a message written in the ancient language of chemistry and survival. The mechanism itself is almost poetic in its simplicity. Within specialized cells called photophores, a molecule called luciferin meets an enzyme called luciferase in the presence of oxygen. The reaction releases energy not as heat, but as cold light, so efficient that almost no energy is wasted. It is light without flame, glow without warmth, a ghostly radiance that seems to defy the rules we know from our sun-soaked world above. Different species have evolved this ability independently, again and again, across the tree of life. Fish, squid, jellyfish, shrimp, even bacteria, all discovered the same chemical secret, each adapting it to their own needs, their own strategies for survival in the dark. Imagine, if you can, descending past the last traces of daylight, where the water turns from deep blue to endless black. Your eyes strain against the darkness, searching for form, for reference, for anything solid, and then you see it, a single point of blue-green light, hovering motionless in the void. Then another, and another. Soon the water around you is filled with tiny constellations, each light moving with slow, deliberate purpose. Some blink in rhythmic patterns, others glow steadily like distant stars, and some flash suddenly, brilliantly, before vanishing again into darkness. It is beautiful and deeply strange, this living Milky Way suspended in liquid night, and you realize, with a quiet thrill, that every light you see is a creature, watching, hunting, signaling, surviving. The anglerfish, perhaps the most famous of all deep-sea dwellers, carries its bioluminescence like a fisherman carries a lantern. From its skull extends a modified spine, the elysium, at the tip of which dangles a glowing lure called the esca. But this light is not produced by the fish itself. Inside that bulbous tip, live colonies of bioluminescent bacteria, millions of them, housed in a specialized chamber where the fish controls their oxygen supply. When the anglerfish wants to hunt, it allows oxygen to flow, and the bacteria glow. The light dangles before the fish's cavernous mouth, swaying gently in the current, looking for all the world like a small, vulnerable creature, easy prey for anything hungry enough to approach. And when something does, drawn by that hypnotic glow, the anglerfish strikes with shocking speed, its jaws snapping shut around prey that never saw the predator hidden in the darkness behind the light. Other fish have taken this light and placed it elsewhere on their bodies. The flashlight, fish carries its bioluminescence in organs beneath its eyes, pouches filled with glowing bacteria that shine like twin headlights. When it needs to hide, the fish can rotate these organs inward or cover them with a flap of dark skin, switching off its lights in an instant. Imagine hunting in complete darkness with a flashlight you can turn on and off at will, and you begin to understand the advantage this gives. The fish can search for food, communicate with others of its kind, then vanish into blackness when larger predators approach, all through the simple act of controlling the light it carries within its own face. But bioluminescence is not only for hunting. In the mid-water regions, where the last whispers of sunlight create a faint, diffuse glow from above, many creatures use light to hide. This seems counterintuitive at first, using light to become invisible. But the strategy is brilliant. These fish and squid, when viewed from below, would appear as dark silhouettes against the faint light filtering down from the surface, easy targets for predators looking upward. To counter this, they have evolved photophores on their undersides that precisely match the intensity and color of the light from above. This is called counter-illumination, and it erases their shadows completely, making them disappear against the background glow. The creature becomes one with the light, neither brighter nor darker than its surroundings. A ghost rendered invisible not by darkness, but by perfect mimicry of faint illumination. The hatchetfish, with its compressed, silvery body shaped like a blade, has taken this to an extraordinary level. Along its belly run rows of photophores, each one adjustable, each one capable of matching the exact wavelength and brightness of the dim light above. Some species can even adjust the angle of their light organs, accounting for the direction of the sun far above the surface. When a predator looks up, it sees nothing, no shadow, no outline, only the seamless continuation of the twilight zone's ambient glow. The hatchetfish hangs suspended in the water column, invisible despite being in plain sight, its body a living mirror of the ocean's own faint luminescence. Then there are the creatures that use light as a weapon, not to attract or hide, but to confuse and escape. Many deep-sea squid and shrimp, when threatened, release clouds of bioluminescent particles into the water, creating glowing decoys that hang in the darkness like phantom versions of themselves. A predator, lunging toward what it thinks is prey, finds itself biting into nothing but glowing seawater while the real creature jets away into the safety of the dark. Some squid take this further, ejecting not just glowing clouds, but glowing shapes, bioluminescent blobs that pulse and writhe, mimicking the movement of living tissue. The predator is left confused, overwhelmed by false targets, each one screaming, "Here I am," in light, while the true target slips away unnoticed. Communication through light is perhaps the most hauntingly beautiful use of bioluminescence in a world where sound travels far, but light does not, where chemical signals disperse slowly in the cold, still water. Bioluminescence becomes a language. Species flash in patterns, rhythms that others of their kind recognize instantly. Some deep-sea fish pulse their lights in sequences as precise as Morse code, each species with its own signature pattern. Males and females find each other in the vastness by these flashing conversations, tiny beacons calling across hundreds of meters of empty water. "I am here," the lights say. "I am ready. I am searching for you." In the darkest place on Earth, creatures speak to each other in light, and there is something profoundly moving about that, something that reminds us that even in isolation and darkness, life finds ways to connect. But to human eyes, this beauty carries an edge of the uncanny. We are not evolved for darkness. Our ancestors feared the night because they could not see what moved within it, and that ancient fear lingers in us still. When we see photographs or footage of deep-sea creatures glowing in the dark, something in us responds with unease. The light is wrong, we feel instinctively. It is cold, blue-green, not the warm yellow-orange of fire or sunlight that our brains associate with safety and home. It emerges from places it should not, from mouths, from bellies, from dangling lures that hang before massive teeth. These creatures wear their light like masks, like lures, like warnings, and we cannot help but see them as alien, as other, as things that belong to a world we were never meant to enter. The colors themselves speak to the physics of the deep. Most bioluminescence in the ocean is blue or blue-green, wavelengths that travel farthest through water. Red light, absorbed quickly, is useless in the deep, but blue penetrates, carries, reaches across the dark. Evolution, patient and efficient, has tuned most bioluminescent creatures to this narrow band of the spectrum. Their photophores produce light between 450 and 490 nanometers, the color of deep twilight, the color of the last light before darkness becomes absolute. There is something melancholy about this uniformity, as if the entire deep ocean has agreed to speak in one quiet, cold color, a single wavelength of communication and survival. Some creatures, though, have discovered red. The dragonfish, predators of the twilight zone, produce red bioluminescence from organs beneath their eyes, a color invisible to most deep-sea creatures whose vision is tuned only to blue. This gives the dragonfish a secret advantage, a flashlight that only it can see. It illuminates prey that remain unaware they are being watched, shining its red searchlight across the dark, while its targets drift oblivious, visible to the hunter, but invisible to themselves. It is a predator's dream, to see without being seen, and the dragonfish has written this dream into its very biology, evolving a private spectrum of light in a world that has forgotten red exists. As we descend past the glowing constellations of bioluminescent creatures into waters where even light becomes scarce and precious, the architecture of predation begins to change in ways that seem almost impossible. Here, where food arrives not in abundance, but in rare, unpredictable moments, where weeks or even months might pass between meals, evolution has sculpted mouths and jaws that prioritize one principle above all others. When opportunity presents itself, nothing must escape. The result is a gallery of dental nightmares, of mouths that seem too large for the bodies that carry them, of teeth that curve and pierce and trap with such efficiency that they appear designed not by nature, but by something with a far darker imagination. Consider the fang-toothed fish, a creature no longer than your hand, but possessing teeth so disproportionately enormous that its mouth cannot fully close. Two fangs, one on each side of the lower jaw, extend upward when the mouth shuts, so long that the fish has evolved special sockets in its skull to accommodate them. Cavities on either side of its brain, where the tips of its own teeth rest when not in use. The fangtooth drifts through the midnight zone, its teeth perpetually visible, giving it an expression of permanent, mindless aggression. But this is not cruelty. This is desperation made manifest, hunger carved into bone. In a place where prey appears suddenly and vanishes just as quickly, these teeth ensure that anything caught in that brief moment of contact cannot twist free, cannot slip away into the protective darkness. The viperfish takes this principle even further, pushing the boundaries of what a skull can do. Its teeth are so long, so needle-sharp, that they extend beyond the length of its head. But the viperfish has solved the problem of impossible anatomy with an innovation that seems borrowed from mechanical engineering. Its skull is hinged. When the fish strikes, its entire head rotates backward, the upper jaw lifting away from the lower, opening the mouth to an angle that would dislocate any mammalian jaw. The teeth, curved slightly inward like the bars of a cage, form a prison in 3 dimensions. Once something enters that mouth, escape is geometrically impossible. Every direction leads only toward more teeth, more points, more pathways deeper into the predator's throat. The viperfish itself is built around this mechanism. Its body, thin and dark, little more than a delivery system for jaws that can swallow prey half its own size. Then there are the mouths that have abandoned all proportion entirely, that have become so enormous they seem less like feeding apparatus and more like living traps. The gulper eel, also called the pelican eel, is barely a fish at all in the traditional sense. Its body is a long, whip-like tail, thin as a ribbon, and at the front end hangs a mouth of such absurd size that it looks like a mistake, like something that should not be able to function. The jaws unhinge and spread like an umbrella, creating a cavity large enough to engulf creatures larger than the eel's entire body. The lower jaw is loosely connected, elastic, stretching to accommodate whatever stumbles into that cavernous maw. When the mouth closes, the jaw compresses, the elastic tissue contracts, and the prey is forced backward into a stomach that can expand to hold the unexpected feast. This might seem grotesque, but consider the mathematics of survival in the deep. Food is so rare that a predator cannot afford to be selective about size. A fish adapted only to eat prey smaller than itself would starve waiting for appropriately sized meals. But a fish that can swallow anything, regardless of proportion, transforms every encounter into a potential meal. The gulper eel drifts through the abyss with its enormous mouth spread wide, a living net filtering the darkness for anything edible. When it finds something, it does not chase. It simply surrounds, envelops, consumes. The mouth is not a tool, but a philosophy. In the deep, abundance comes not from finding more food, but from being able to eat whatever food you find. The black swallower has taken this philosophy to its logical extreme. This fish, rarely longer than 10 inches, can consume prey more than twice its own length and 10 times its mass. Its jaw unhinges like a snake's. Its teeth curve inward to prevent escape, and its stomach stretches to accommodate impossible volumes. There are photographs of black swallowers recovered from the ocean with prey so large still visible inside them that the predator's body is distorted beyond recognition, stretched transparent, the outline of the meal clearly visible through skin that has become a thin membrane. Sometimes the prey is so large that it decomposes before the black swallower can digest it. The gases from decomposition causing the predator to float to the surface, still wrapped around its final meal, dead from the ambition of its own hunger. These images are deeply unsettling to us because they violate our intuitive understanding of how bodies should work. We expect mouths to be proportional, to make sense, to fit within the architecture of the face. When we see a creature whose mouth is larger than its body, whose teeth extend past its eyes, whose jaw can unhinge to create a cavity that should not exist, something in our pattern recognition systems recoils. This is wrong, we feel. This breaks the rules, and we are correct. These creatures have broken the rules, or rather, they have discovered that in the deep sea, the old rules do not apply, and new, stranger rules have emerged to replace them. Many of these predators possess teeth that are not simply large, but structurally bizarre. Some species have teeth that are transparent, made of a crystalline form of dentin that refracts light in unsettling ways, making the teeth seem to flicker and vanish in photographs. Others have teeth that curve so dramatically inward that they form a spiral, a one-way path that guides prey deeper into the throat with every movement. These are not teeth for chewing. Nothing is chewed in the deep sea. These are teeth for gripping, for holding, for ensuring that once flesh touches tooth, the relationship becomes permanent. The prey does not need to be killed quickly. It only needs to be prevented from escaping until the predator's digestive system can complete its slow, inevitable work. The cost of maintaining these enormous jaws and teeth is significant. Bone and enamel require calcium and phosphorus, minerals that must be obtained from food, creating a cycle where the adaptations meant to help acquire food themselves require food to maintain. Many deep-sea fish have responded by reducing bone density elsewhere, making their skeletons lighter, more porous, sacrificing structural integrity in less critical areas to afford the weapons they cannot live without. Others have evolved teeth that are continuously replaced, new teeth growing in behind the old in a conveyor belt of sharpness, ensuring that no matter how many prey items are caught and held, there are always fresh points ready to pierce the next meal. As we pass the hunters with their terrible mouths, we begin to understand that every feature that disturbs us, every anatomical impossibility that makes us recoil, exists because it works. The deep sea is not cruel, but it is unforgiving. It does not provide second chances. And so the creatures here have evolved without compromise, without aesthetics, without concern for how they might appear to eyes that were never meant to see them. They have become what they needed to become. And if that means carrying teeth too large for their heads, jaws that unhinge like nightmares, mouths that swallow the impossible, then that is what they are. Perfect for their world, unsettling in ours, and absolutely, undeniably real, drifting through the dark with mouths open wide, waiting with infinite patience for the next rare moment when something edible drifts close enough to catch. In the deep sea, where movement requires energy, and energy is earned only through food, some creatures have discovered that the most efficient hunt is the one where the prey comes to you. These are the deceivers, the tricksters, the patient ones who have transformed parts of their own bodies into lures, into promises of food or safety that dissolve into jaws the moment they are believed. And among all these masters of deception, none is more iconic, more instantly recognizable, more deeply embedded in our collective imagination of deep-sea horror than the anglerfish. The anglerfish does not chase. It does not patrol. It does not search. Instead, it waits, suspended in the absolute darkness of the midnight zone, its body perfectly still, conserving every molecule of energy. From its head extends a modified dorsal spine, the elysium, a fishing rod that has evolved from what was once a simple fin ray. At the tip of this spine dangles the esca, a bulbous lure that glows with soft, pulsing bioluminescence. But this is not the fish's own light. Inside the esca lives a colony of bioluminescent bacteria, millions of microscopic organisms that the anglerfish has cultivated in a specialized chamber, feeding them, protecting them, controlling their light output by regulating the flow of oxygen to their sealed environment. It is a partnership, a symbiosis, the fish providing shelter and nutrients, while the bacteria provide the one thing the anglerfish cannot produce itself: a light in the darkness that looks exactly like food. The lure dangles and sways with the current, or sometimes the anglerfish twitches it deliberately, making it dance and bob in patterns that mimic the movement of small prey. To a hungry fish in the deep, where bioluminescence often marks the presence of small crustaceans or other edible creatures, this glowing morsel appears as salvation, as the rare gift of a meal in the endless dark. The prey approaches, cautious at first, then with growing confidence as the light continues to pulse and promise. It does not see the anglerfish. The predator's body is black, darker than the surrounding water, invisible in the absence of light. Its mouth is enormous, often as wide as its entire body, filled with teeth that angle backward in rows. And it waits with a patience that feels almost supernatural, allowing its prey to come closer, closer, until the moment when distance collapses and the mouth opens and closes in a fraction of a second, creating a vacuum that pulls the prey inward along with a rush of water. The strike is so fast that it can barely be captured on high-speed cameras. The anglerfish does not bite. It inhales, creating a negative pressure zone that sucks prey into its mouth before they can register what has happened. The teeth, once the prey is inside, serve only to prevent escape, to guide the meal deeper into the throat, where peristaltic contractions will slowly work it down into the stomach. And then the anglerfish returns to stillness, to waiting, the lure glowing once more in the dark, ready to repeat the trick that has worked for millions of years, ready to exploit the universal desperation of hunger that makes all creatures, eventually, willing to take risks. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of anglerfish biology has nothing to do with their hunting strategy and everything to do with their reproduction. In the vast, empty spaces of the deep ocean, finding a mate is statistically nearly impossible. The chances of a male and female of the same species encountering each other in the correct moment of reproductive readiness in a space larger than continents are vanishingly small. Evolution's solution to this problem is so strange, so extreme, that when scientists first discovered it, they thought they were looking at a parasite. They were not entirely wrong. Male anglerfish are born small, sometimes a tenth the size of females, and their entire existence is oriented toward a single purpose: finding a female before they starve. They have large eyes relative to their body size, adapted to detect the faint bioluminescent glow of a female's lure from as far away as possible. Their sense of smell is acute, tuned to detect the chemical traces of female leaves in the water. When a male finds a female, he does not court her. He bites her, attaching his mouth to her body, and then something extraordinary happens. His tissues begin to fuse with hers. His circulatory system connects to her bloodstream. His body begins to atrophy. His eyes, his fins, his internal organs slowly being absorbed, reduced, until he is little more than a pair of testes hanging from the female's body, permanently attached, receiving nutrients from her blood and providing sperm whenever she is ready to release eggs. A single female may carry multiple males this way, their vestigial bodies dotting her flanks like growths, like tumors, each one a former individual reduced to a reproductive organ, kept alive by her circulation, no longer capable of independent existence. This is called sexual parasitism, though it is not truly parasitism since both parties benefit. The female gains the guarantee of fertilization whenever she needs it, without having to search for a mate. The male gains the certainty of reproductive success, his genes passed on without the need to survive independently in an environment where survival is nearly impossible. But the image is deeply unsettling to us. These fused bodies, these males who have sacrificed everything, even their individual existence, for the chance to reproduce. The anglerfish is not alone in using lures. Throughout the deep sea, creatures have discovered that deception is often more efficient than pursuit. The dragonfish, a long, serpentine predator with photophores running along its body like landing lights, has a barbell extending from its chin, a whisker-like projection tipped with a glowing lure that it can extend or retract. The dragonfish combines this with its secret weapon, red bioluminescence in searchlight organs beneath its eyes. Most deep-sea creatures cannot see red light, their vision tuned only to the blue-green spectrum that dominates bioluminescence. But the dragonfish can. It illuminates prey with red light they cannot see, watching them drift unaware through what they perceive as darkness, while simultaneously dangling a blue lure that promises food. The prey, caught between a light they can see and a light they cannot, never understands what hunts them until teeth close around their body. Some species of deep-sea fish have evolved lures that are not simple glowing bulbs, but complex structures that mimic the appearance of small fish or crustaceans in remarkable detail. These lures have fins, segments, structures that catch and reflect the faint light in ways that create the illusion of scale and depth. They twitch and swim in miniature, hanging from the predator's appendages. Perfect puppet shows performed in the dark for an audience that will die if they believe the performance. Evolution has refined these lures over countless generations, selecting for the ones that most effectively trigger the prey drive, that most closely mimic the movement and appearance of real food. The predators carry these lies in their own flesh, these false promises written into their DNA. The creatures that use lures must possess, in some sense, extraordinary patience. An anglerfish may wait days or weeks between successful strikes, hanging motionless in the water, burning the absolute minimum of calories, its lure glowing in unwavering patience. There is no frustration, no impatience, no decision to give up and try another strategy. There is only waiting, a stillness so complete it seems more like death than life, broken only by the occasional twitch of the lure and the rare, explosive moment when prey arrives and the mouth opens and reality collapses into hunger. These lures speak to something deep in the logic of the deep sea. In an environment where every movement costs energy you may not be able to replace, the most successful strategies are often the most patient ones. Not the fastest swimmer, but the one who does not need to swim. Not the most aggressive hunter, but the one who convinces prey to hunt themselves, to swim directly into the jaws that wait behind the promise of light. The lure is efficient in a way that pursuit can never be. As we descend deeper into the ocean, past the hunters with their lures and their terrible teeth, the water above us grows heavier with every meter. This is not a metaphor. The weight is real, measurable, increasing in a steady mathematical progression that transforms the environment into something fundamentally different from the world we know. At the surface, the atmosphere presses down on us at 1 atmosphere of pressure, roughly 14.5 pounds per square inch, a weight so constant and familiar that we never notice it. But water is far denser than air, and with every 10 meters of depth, another full atmosphere of pressure is added. At 100 meters, the pressure is 10 atmospheres. At 1,000 meters, 100 atmospheres. At 4,000 meters, in the heart of the abyssal zone, the pressure reaches 400 atmospheres, 400 times the weight that bears down on us in our surface world. And yet, life persists, not just survives, but thrives, moving through these crushing depths with a grace that seems impossible. The secret lies not in resisting the pressure, but in eliminating the possibility of being crushed. The creatures of the deep sea have evolved bodies that contain almost no air, no gas-filled spaces that could collapse under force. Instead, they are built primarily from water and soft tissues, materials that are incompressible, that cannot be squeezed any smaller no matter how much weight presses down upon them. Water cannot crush water. And so these creatures drift through pressures that would destroy us, their bodies in perfect equilibrium with the weight of the ocean, feeling no strain, no discomfort, existing in balance with forces we can barely comprehend. This adaptation, brilliant in its efficiency, creates a consequence that disturbs us deeply when we see these creatures brought to the surface. Without rigid internal structures, without bones as we know them, without the architectural scaffolding that gives land animals and surface fish their familiar forms, deep sea creatures often appear soft, gelatinous, almost liquid in their consistency. Their bodies, removed from the pressure that normally supports them, sag and droop and spread in ways that seem wrong, that seem like decay or disease, like something that has gone terribly amiss. The blobfish has become the unfortunate icon of this phenomenon, its face appearing in countless photographs and internet memes, always looking miserable, melted, like a caricature of sadness rendered in pale pink flesh. But this image is deeply unfair to the creature itself. In its natural habitat, 4,000 feet beneath the surface off the coast of Australia, the blobfish is not a blob at all. Supported by the enormous pressure of its environment, its gelatinous tissues hold their shape, its body streamlined enough to rest on the seafloor and drift just above it, mouth open, waiting for small crustaceans and organic matter to float within reach. It is a perfectly functional predator, adapted exquisitely to its world. But when brought rapidly to the surface, when the pressure drops from hundreds of atmospheres to 1, its body expands, loses cohesion, spreads into the unfortunate shape that has made it famous. We are not seeing the blobfish as it truly is. we are seeing a creature experiencing the equivalent of explosive decompression, its body destroyed by the absence of the pressure it was built to live within. The same tragedy befalls many deep-sea creatures when they are brought up too quickly. Fish, with delicate, watery tissues, arrive at the surface already dead, their bodies no longer recognizable, transformed by pressure change into something that looks more like gelatin than flesh. Their eyes, if they have them, may bulge grotesquely or rupture. Their skin, stretched beyond its normal parameters, becomes translucent, revealing internal organs in unsettling detail. What we see in photographs and specimen jars is not the creature as it lives, but the creature in death, subjected to environmental conditions as alien to it as the deep ocean would be to us. Consider the structure of these bodies more carefully, though, and the elegance of the design becomes apparent. Most deep-sea fish have eliminated or drastically reduced their swim bladders, the gas-filled organs that surface fish use to control buoyancy. A swim bladder in the deep would be compressed to uselessness, or worse, would require so much energy to maintain at high pressure that it would cost more than it provides. Instead, many deep-sea fish have replaced this air-based buoyancy system with fat and oil deposits, compounds less dense than water, but containing no compressible gases. Some species accumulate light oils in their livers, organs that can grow enormous, sometimes accounting for a third of the fish's total body weight. These oils provide lift without the vulnerability of air, allowing the fish to hover effortlessly in the water column, perfectly balanced between sinking and floating. Others have simply embraced greater density, allowing themselves to sink slowly when they stop swimming, or conversely, have reduced their bone density to near cartilaginous flexibility, their skeletons more suggestion than structure. The result is a body that bends rather than breaks, that flexes with pressure changes rather than shattering, that can withstand not only the crushing weight of the deep, but also the small variations in pressure that occur with changes in depth or current. These fish are not weak. They are flexible in ways that make rigid structures seem primitive by comparison. The gelatinous appearance extends beyond fish to many other deep-sea inhabitants. Jellyfish and their relatives, the siphonophores, drift through the abyss as living clouds of transparent tissue, some growing to lengths of over 100 feet, yet weighing almost nothing. They are more than 95% water, their bodies so insubstantial that they seem more like organized currents than creatures. Yet they are predators, trailing tentacles armed with millions of stinging cells, paralyzing fish and crustaceans that brush against them. Their transparency makes them nearly invisible, even to creatures with functioning eyes, and their softness means pressure is simply irrelevant to their existence. They cannot be crushed because there is nothing solid to crush. Sea cucumbers, those strange bottom dwellers that inch across the abyssal plains, have taken softness to an extreme that borders on the surreal. Their bodies are elongated bags of muscle and water, flexible enough to squeeze through crevices, to change shape dramatically in response to threats. Some species can actually liquefy their internal tissues when attacked, turning their own bodies into a soup that they can later reconstitute once danger has passed. Others expel their internal organs through their anus as a defense mechanism, distracting predators with a tangle of sticky tubes while the sea cucumber itself crawls away to regenerate what it has lost. These are bodies that treat solidity as optional, that flow and reform and sacrifice pieces of themselves with a casual fluidity that makes our own rigid, permanent anatomy seem almost fragile by comparison. The translucence of so many deep-sea creatures adds another layer of strangeness to their appearance. When tissues are thin enough, when pigmentation is reduced or absent, when there are no hard structures to block light, the body becomes a window into itself. We can see hearts beating, digestive systems processing food, gonads developing eggs, all the machinery of life laid bare and visible. This transparency evolved as camouflage, as a way to disappear in water where there is nothing to hide behind. But to human eyes, it appears as vulnerability, as exposure, as if the creature is missing some fundamental layer of protection that all living things should have. We see the inner workings and feel we are looking at something unfinished, something that should be private made public. Yet there is profound beauty in this softness. Once we adjust our expectations, once we stop judging these creatures by the standards of our rigid, air-breathing world, a body built from water and flexible tissue is a body in perfect harmony with its environment, requiring no energy to resist pressure, no constant maintenance of rigid structures, no risk of catastrophic failure if those structures break. It is a body that has achieved a kind of fluid grace, that moves through the crushing deep as easily as we move through air, that bends and flows and adapts with an elegance that rigid forms can never match. In the cold, dark waters of the deep, where food is scarce and pressure is immense, something strange happens to size. Creatures that would be small in shallow water grow large, sometimes enormous, their bodies swelling to proportions that seem to violate the familiar rules of biology. This is deep-sea gigantism, a phenomenon observed across multiple lineages, where animals grow far beyond the size of their shallow water relatives, transforming the familiar into the alien through nothing more than exaggerated scale. A woodlouse on land might be the length of your thumbnail. In the deep ocean, its cousin, the giant isopod, can grow to 16 inches long, the size of a small cat, its segmented body armored in pale chitin, its 14 legs clicking and scraping as it crawls across the abyssal seafloor like something escaped from a fever dream about ancient insects. The giant isopod is perhaps the most unsettling example of this phenomenon because it takes something we know, something small and harmless that we might find under a rotting log, and inflates it to a size that transforms recognition into revulsion. These are pillbugs, roly-polies, creatures we handled as children without fear. But at 16 inches long, with compound eyes the size of coins and mandibles strong enough to tear through fish flesh, the giant isopod becomes something else entirely. It is a scavenger of the deep, crawling slowly across the mud in search of dead fish, whale carcasses, anything that has sunk from above and come to rest on the bottom. When it finds food, it can gorge itself, consuming so much that its flexible body swells visibly, and then it can survive for months, even years, without eating again, entering a state of near hibernation where its metabolism slows to almost nothing. Scientists have kept giant isopods in aquariums where they have gone 5 years without food, simply sitting motionless on the bottom, waiting with infinite patience for the next meal that in the wild might arrive at any moment or might never come. This ability to endure starvation, to stretch a single feeding across years, is one key to their size. In an environment where food is unpredictable, where a whale fall might not occur in a given area for decades, the ability to store energy and survive lean times favors larger bodies with slower metabolisms, creatures that can go longer between meals without dying. The Japanese spider crab takes gigantism in a different direction, stretching not bulk, but reach. Its body is relatively small, perhaps a foot across the carapace, but its legs extend outward like the arms of some mechanical harvester, reaching spans of up to 12 feet from claw tip to claw tip. Walking across the seafloor, these crabs look like ambulatory nightmares, all angles and joints, their legs too thin and too long, bending at impossible points, giving them a fragile, skeletal appearance despite their considerable weight. They move with a slow, deliberate gait, each leg finding purchase independently, the whole creature flowing across the bottom like a spider made of bone and shell. A design that seems too delicate to support itself, yet has persisted for millions of years. These crabs can live for 100 years or more, growing slowly, molting periodically, adding length to those extraordinary legs with each shed of their old exoskeleton. In the cold water of their habitat, off the coast of Japan at depths of up to 2,000 feet, their metabolism is slow enough that this gradual accumulation of size becomes possible. They are in no hurry. Time moves differently in the cold and the dark, and a crab that might grow to full size in 5 years in tropical shallows may take 50 years to reach the same size in the deep. Its life stretched out across decades of patient, methodical existence. The logic behind deep-sea gigantism is complex, a convergence of multiple factors that together create conditions where being large becomes advantageous. First, the cold. Temperature affects metabolic rate in ectothermic animals, creatures that do not generate their own body heat. In cold water, chemical reactions slow down, oxygen consumption decreases, and the basic cost of living drops significantly. This is called Kleiber's law, the observation that metabolic rate scales with body size but not proportionally. Larger animals have lower metabolic rates per unit of body mass than smaller ones, meaning a large animal uses energy more efficiently than several small animals of equivalent total weight. In the deep, where every calorie is precious, this efficiency advantage can mean the difference between survival and starvation. Second, oxygen availability. Cold water holds more dissolved oxygen than warm water, and in the deep, where temperatures hover just above freezing, oxygen saturation is high. Larger bodies require more oxygen, and in an oxygen-rich environment, the constraint that limits size in warmer waters is partially lifted. The combination of cold temperatures and high oxygen creates a metabolic sweet spot where larger bodies are not just viable but advantageous, where the energetic benefits of size outweigh the costs. Third, longevity. In stable, cold environments with few predators and slow growth rates, creatures can live extraordinarily long lives. Some deep-sea fish are estimated to live over 150 years, growing slowly but continuously throughout their lives. The Greenland shark, which ventures into very deep, cold water, can live for 400 years or more, possibly making it the longest-lived vertebrate on Earth. With lifespans measured in centuries, even slow growth can accumulate into impressive size. These creatures are not in a hurry to mature, to reproduce, to die. They have time, vast stretches of it, and they use that time to grow, adding length and mass in increments so small they would be imperceptible to us. But over decades and centuries, those increments add up. But perhaps the most unsettling giants of the deep are not the crustaceans, but the cephalopods. The giant squid, Architeuthis ducks, can reach lengths of up to 43 feet, with eyes the size of dinner plates, the largest eyes in the animal kingdom. These are not the cute, human-sized squid we see in shallow waters, not the creatures we eat fried in rings. These are animals that hunt in the absolute darkness of the deep, their tentacles lined with rotating hooks, their beaks powerful enough to slice through steel cable, their bodies propelled by jet propulsion that allows them to strike with explosive speed despite their size. For centuries, they were legends, sea monsters that appeared in sailors' tales and medieval manuscripts, too large to believe, too strange to be real. But they are real, and specimens wash ashore occasionally, or are found in the stomachs of sperm whales, proving that in the deep, the legends are sometimes true. The colossal squid, Mesonicoteuthis hamiltoni, is even larger, heavier if not longer, with hooks on its tentacles that rotate on swivels, designed to grip and shred prey that struggles. It lives at depths where no human could survive, hunting in darkness so complete that even its enormous eyes can detect only the faint bioluminescence of other creatures. Very few specimens have ever been recovered intact, and most of what we know comes from fragments, from beaks found in whale stomachs, from partial bodies that surfaced mysteriously. These squid are ambush predators, hanging motionless in the water column, waiting for prey to drift within reach of tentacles that can extend with frightening speed, longer than a school bus, tipped with weapons that seem designed by something that had never heard of mercy. Why does size disturb us so profoundly when it involves creatures we think we know? A regular isopod is harmless, even charming in its segmented simplicity. But scale it up, make it the size of a cat, and suddenly it triggers something primal in our threat assessment systems. The same features that seemed benign at a small scale, the compound eyes, the segmented body, the many legs, become menacing when enlarged. We see the details we could ignore before. The mandibles that could bite, the legs that could grip, the armor that could resist. Scale transforms the familiar into the monstrous, not by changing the creature, but by changing our relationship to it, moving it from thing I could step on to thing that is too large for my instinctive threat categories. This is amplified when the enlarged creature is an arthropod, something with an exoskeleton, jointed legs, compound eyes, all the features that mark it as fundamentally different from us. Our mammalian brains are calibrated to assess threats from other mammals. Creatures with fur and warm blood and social behaviors we can partially predict. But arthropods follow different rules. Their bodies built on fundamentally different architectures, their behaviors governed by neural systems so alien to ours that we cannot read their intentions. When such a creature is small, this alienness is containable, even charming. When it is large, it becomes threatening. And yet, there is something magnificent about these giants, something that speaks to the plasticity of life, its ability to find solutions to any environment, no matter how extreme. The giant isopod, the spider crab, the colossal squid, all represent evolutionary experiments in pushing the boundaries of size, testing how large a body can grow in specific conditions, finding the limits where physics and biology finally say no more. They are living proof that the deep sea is not just a place of scarcity and darkness, but also a place of possibility, where the constraints that govern life in shallow water are suspended or inverted, where being large is not a disadvantage, but a strategy, refined over millions of years into forms that seem impossible but work perfectly. Beyond the giants, beyond the creatures that disturb us merely by being larger than they should be, there exist animals whose entire body plans seem to have been designed by something that never learned the conventional rules of anatomy. These are the creatures that challenge our most basic assumptions about what a body can be, what a face should look like, where organs should be placed, how limbs should attach. They are not simply strange, they are architecturally impossible, assembled in configurations that seem to violate the fundamental principles of bilateral symmetry, of form following function, of bodies that make intuitive sense when you look at them, and yet they live, they move, they hunt and reproduce and thrive in the deep. Proof that evolution is not constrained by our aesthetic sensibilities or our ideas about proper design. The barrel-eye fish, Macropinna microstoma, is perhaps the most elegant example of this alien architecture. At first glance, in photographs taken in the wild, it appears relatively normal. A small fish hovering in the water, its body streamlined, unremarkable. But then you notice something wrong with the head. The dome on top, what should be bone or scale, is transparent, completely transparent. A bubble of clear tissue like a glass helmet. And through this window, you can see inside the fish's skull. There, pointing upward, are two green, tubular structures that you slowly realize are its eyes. Not on the surface of the head, where eyes should be, but inside it, looking up through the transparent dome, like a pilot looking through a cockpit canopy. The dark spots you initially took for eyes at the front of its face are not eyes at all. They are olfactory organs, their nose positioned where their eyes should be. This bizarre arrangement makes perfect evolutionary sense once you understand the barrel eye's hunting strategy. It hovers motionless in the twilight zone, looking upward through the water, watching for the silhouettes of prey against the faint light filtering down from above. Its tubular eyes are packed with rods, light-sensitive cells that maximize its ability to detect even the dimmest illumination. The transparent dome protects these delicate organs while allowing unobstructed vision upward. And remarkably, recent research has discovered that the barrel eye can rotate its eyes forward, inside its own head, when it needs to look ahead or down, the tubular organs pivoting like turrets beneath the clear skull. It is a design that seems science fictional, that looks like something a concept artist would sketch for an alien creature, and yet it exists, swimming through the ocean's twilight, seeing through its own transparent head, with eyes that point in directions eyes were never meant to point. The pelican eel, or gulper eel, takes the concept of all mouth to an extreme that borders on the absurd. This creature is essentially a mouth attached to a whip-like tail, with almost nothing in between. Its jaws are enormous, hinged loosely, capable of opening to angles that create a cavity larger than the eel's entire body. The mouth resembles a pelican's pouch, hence the name, a massive, flexible scoop that can engulf prey many times the eel's own size. Behind this enormous mouth, the body tapers dramatically into a thin tail that can be several feet long, trailing behind like an afterthought, tipped with a small bioluminescent organ that may serve as a lure or simply as a way to communicate with others of its kind. The pelican eel drifts through the midnight zone with its mouth open, a living net, filter feeding on small crustaceans and fish that swim into the trap. When it catches something large, the mouth closes and the jaw compresses, forcing the prey backward into a stomach that can expand to accommodate meals of improbable size. The entire creature seems disproportionate, unbalanced, like a rough sketch of a fish where someone forgot to draw the middle part. And yet it works. This strange body plan, optimized for a single function, catching anything edible in an environment where edible things are vanishingly rare. On the abyssal seafloor, moving with slow deliberation across the mud, are the sea pigs, creatures so bizarre they seem more like abstract sculptures than living animals. These are holothurians, sea cucumbers, but ones that have evolved legs, stubby protrusions called tube feet that they use to walk across the bottom, like plump, translucent pigs on stilts. Their bodies are soft, often pink or pale purple, bloated with water, studded with papillae that extend upward like antennae or tentacles. They move in herds sometimes, dozens of them crawling together across the seafloor, their tube feet leaving trails in the sediment, their bodies glowing faintly in the lights of deep-sea cameras. Sea pigs feed on organic particles that rain down from above, the marine snow of decomposing matter sifting through mud with appendages around their mouths, extracting whatever nutrients can be found in the ooze. They look boneless, formless, like creatures that have not quite decided what shape to be. And there is something deeply unsettling about watching them move. These pale, bloated things walking in slow motion across the dark, leaving tracks that suggest intention, purpose, consciousness in a form so alien we cannot read it. They are perfectly adapted to their environment, essential components of the deep-sea ecosystem, recyclers of nutrients, but they look like mistakes, like rough drafts that were never refined into final forms. The Dumbo octopus, named for the ear-like fins that protrude from its head, like the ears of Disney's flying elephant, floats through the deep with an ethereal grace that makes it one of the few deep-sea creatures humans find adorable rather than disturbing. Its body is gelatinous, semi-transparent, often ghost white or pale pink, and it moves not by jetting like its shallow water cousins, but by flapping those ear-like fins, undulating through the water with a slow, dreamlike motion. It hovers above the seafloor, looking down with large eyes, searching for worms and crustaceans, then descends to capture prey with its webbed arms, which stretch between its 8 limbs like the fabric of an umbrella. These octopuses live at depths of up to 13,000 feet, deeper than almost any other octopus species. In the hadal zone, where pressure exceeds 1,000 atmospheres. Their softness is both adaptation and necessity, their bodies containing no rigid structures that could be crushed, their movements optimized for an environment where every calorie must be carefully budgeted. Despite their cuteness, they are still predators, still hunters, their webbed arms trapping prey against the seafloor, their beaks delivering the killing strike. But there is something gentle in their appearance, in their slow motion flight, that makes them seem less alien than most deep sea creatures, more like visitors from some kinder version of the abyss. And then there is the vampire squid, Vampiroteuthis infernalis, whose scientific name translates literally as vampire squid from hell, a creature that lives up to its dramatic nomenclature. It is not truly a squid, nor an octopus, but something between, a relic species from an ancient lineage, equipped with 8 arms connected by webbing that forms a cloak. When threatened, the vampire squid can invert this webbing, pulling it up and over its body, transforming itself into a spiky ball covered in soft cirri, fleshy projections that make it look far less appetizing. The interior of the webbing is dark purple-black, lined with bioluminescent photophores that can produce disorienting light displays. The vampire squid also possesses 2 long, retractable filaments that extend from pockets near its eyes. Organs unique to this species, used to collect marine snow that the squid reels in and consumes. Unlike most cephalopods, which are active predators, the vampire squid is primarily a detritivore, eating falling organic matter, a peaceful lifestyle that contrasts sharply with its menacing appearance. Its eyes are the largest relative to body size of any animal on Earth, enormous red orbs that glow in the lights of submersibles, giving it a look of demonic intelligence. Yet it is a gentle creature, drifting through the oxygen minimum zone, areas where oxygen levels are so low that few other animals can survive. Its metabolism adapted to function on almost nothing. What disturbs us about these bodies, these alien architectures, is not violence or predation, but wrongness, the violation of expected patterns. Our brains are prediction machines, constantly building models of what things should look like, how they should be arranged, where parts should go. When we see an animal with transparent heads and eyes inside its skull, or a mouth larger than its body, or legs on a sea cucumber, or ears on an octopus, those predictions fail. The pattern doesn't match. The form doesn't follow a familiar function. And in that mismatch, we feel discomfort, the sense that something has gone wrong, that these creatures are errors, glitches in the normal order of things. But they are not errors. They are innovations, solutions to problems that don't exist in our world, adaptations to environments we can barely imagine. These creatures are not assembled from spare parts. They are coherent, complete, each feature integrated into a functional whole that survives and reproduces in one of Earth's harshest environments. Their strangeness is our problem, not theirs. They are at home in the deep, perfectly comfortable in bodies that seem impossible, moving through their world with the ease of creatures that have never known any other way to be. Evolution is not an artist working from a predetermined plan. It is a process that explores every available option, that tries every combination, that keeps whatever works, regardless of how bizarre it looks to eyes that evolved in sunlight. And in the deep sea, freed from many of the constraints that limit shallow water life, freed from predation pressure from above, from competition for space, from the need to conform to established body plans, evolution has gone wild, creating a gallery of forms that showcase just how flexible, how creative, how utterly unbounded life can be when given enough time and enough pressure to explore the space of all possible bodies. Below the abyssal plains, where the sea floor seems to have reached its ultimate depth, the Earth's crust fractures and folds, creating wounds in the ocean bottom that plunge even deeper into darkness. These are the hadal trenches, named for Hades, the ancient Greek underworld, places where the ocean reaches depths so extreme they seem more like concepts than locations. The Mariana Trench, deepest of all, descends to nearly 7 miles below the surface, to a place called Challenger Deep, where the pressure exceeds 16,000 pounds per square inch. More than 1,000 atmospheres. A crushing weight equivalent to having 50 jumbo jets stacked on top of every square inch of your body. At these depths, the environment becomes so extreme that survival itself seems like a violation of physical law, and yet life persists, adapted to conditions that represent the absolute limit of what biology can withstand on Earth. The hadal zone begins at 6,000 meters, roughly 20,000 feet, and extends downward to the deepest point in any ocean. It comprises less than 0.5% of the ocean's total area, existing only in trenches, those narrow rifts where tectonic plates collide and one is forced beneath the other, creating canyons that split the seafloor like scars. The Mariana Trench in the Pacific, the Tonga Trench, the Philippine Trench, the Japan Trench, each one a world unto itself, isolated from the others by thousands of miles of shallower seafloor, creating island ecosystems in reverse, pockets of extreme depth separated by vast expanses of merely deep ocean. The creatures that live in one trench may never encounter those in another, and over millions of years, this isolation has allowed unique species to evolve in each hadal zone, life forms found nowhere else on Earth. When humans first sent cameras and instruments to these depths, there was genuine uncertainty about what they would find. Some scientists predicted sterile seafloors, pressure, and cold so extreme that even bacteria might struggle to survive. Others imagined strange chemosynthetic communities clustered around volcanic vents, life powered by Earth's internal heat rather than energy from the surface. What they discovered was both simpler and stranger. Communities of animals, not vastly different from those in the shallower abyss, but specialized, refined, pushed to the absolute limits of adaptation. Fish swimming at depths where fish should be impossible. Amphipods scuttling across the sediment in swarms. Sea cucumbers lying on the bottom like pale, bloated pillows. Life, ordinary in some ways and extraordinary in others, thriving in the most extreme habitat on the planet. The deepest living fish ever recorded, discovered at depths exceeding 26,000 feet in the Mariana Trench, is a species of snailfish, a creature so delicate it looks more like a translucent ghost than a vertebrate. Its body is almost entirely water and soft tissue, with bones so reduced they barely qualify as skeletal structure, more like flexible cartilage that bends rather than breaks under pressure. Its skull is incomplete, lacking the bony roof that protects the brain in most fish, covered instead by a transparent membrane through which you can see the brain itself, a small, dark mass floating in fluid. This seems impossibly vulnerable, a design flaw that should result in immediate death. But it is precisely the adaptation that allows survival at this depth. Rigid structures would crush, soft structures flex, compress, and survive. These snailfish feed on amphipods and other small crustaceans, animals that thrive in the trenches in surprising numbers. The amphipods of the hadal zone can grow quite large compared to their shallow water relatives, some exceeding 4 inches in length, their bodies armored in translucent chitin that glows faintly in the lights of submersibles. They are scavengers and predators, consuming marine snow, preying on each other, and swarming over any larger food source that reaches the trench bottom. Researchers have deployed baited cameras in the hadal zone and watched as hundreds of amphipods appear within hours, converging on the bait from seemingly empty seafloor, their bodies moving with surprising speed for creatures living under such pressure. The pressure itself is the defining characteristic of hadal life, the constraint that shapes every adaptation, every molecular structure, every cellular process. At these depths, water is compressed to such density that its properties change subtly. The speed of sound increases. The behavior of dissolved gases shifts. And most critically, proteins, the molecular machines that run all cellular processes, begin to malfunction. Proteins fold into specific three-dimensional shapes, and it is this shape that determines their function. Under extreme pressure, proteins can be squeezed into different configurations, losing their functional form, becoming useless or even toxic. For life to exist at hadal depths, every protein must be specially adapted, modified in ways that make it pressure resistant, able to maintain its shape and function even when compressed by forces that would denature the proteins of shallow water creatures instantly. Scientists studying hadal organisms have found unique molecules in their cells, pressure-adapted versions of common proteins, cellular machinery that has been refined over millions of years to function under conditions that seem designed to prevent function. Some hadal fish accumulate organic compounds called piezolites in their tissues, small molecules that counteract the effects of pressure at the cellular level, stabilizing membranes and proteins, allowing normal biochemistry to occur in an environment that should render it impossible. These are molecular adaptations as critical as the shape of a body or the structure of an eye, invisible but absolutely essential. The difference between life and death, written not in anatomy, but in chemistry. And yet, despite these extraordinary adaptations, there are limits. Below, approximately 27,000 feet, vertebrate fish disappear. No fish has ever been found or photographed deeper than this, and the reason appears to be fundamental biochemistry. At extreme depths, a molecule called TMAO, trimethylamine N-oxide, which hadal fish accumulate to stabilize their proteins, reaches concentrations where it begins to interfere with other cellular processes. The very adaptation that allows survival becomes, at sufficient concentration, a poison. This depth represents the absolute limit for fish, not because of some arbitrary constraint, but because of the fundamental chemistry of life itself. Below this boundary, only invertebrates persist, creatures with simpler body plans and different biochemical strategies. The hadal zone is often described as Earth's final frontier, less explored than the surface of Mars. And this is statistically true. Only a handful of humans have ever descended to these depths. More people have walked on the moon than have visited Challenger Deep. The technology required is extraordinary. Titanium pressure spheres with walls inches thick, systems that can withstand forces that would crumple steel submarines like aluminum cans, life support that must function flawlessly for hours in an environment where a single leak would result in instant catastrophic failure. Each descent is a journey to an alien world, one that happens to exist on our own planet, hidden beneath miles of water, invisible and inaccessible except through the most advanced technology humans can create. Recent expeditions have discovered something deeply troubling about even these most remote environments. In the stomachs of hadal, amphipods recovered from the deepest trenches, researchers have found microplastics, tiny fragments of synthetic polymers that originated from human waste, from discarded bottles and bags and industrial runoff, materials that made their way into the ocean and eventually sank, joining the marine snow in its endless fall, reaching even the deepest point on Earth. In sediment cores from Challenger Deep, scientists have found elevated levels of industrial pollutants, persistent organic chemicals that were manufactured on land, released into the environment, and gradually accumulated in the one place on Earth that should be pristine, untouched, beyond human reach. This discovery carries with it a particular sadness, the realization that there is no place left on Earth that human activity has not touched, that even the hadal trenches, isolated by pressure and depth and darkness from everything else, are not isolated from us, from our waste, from the consequences of our existence. The deepest living creatures on the planet, organisms that have never seen sunlight, that evolved in an environment utterly separated from the surface world, now carry within their tissues the molecular signatures of human industry, proof that the ocean is one system, that what we discard eventually reaches everywhere, that distance and depth are not protection against contamination. Yet even bearing this burden, the creatures of the hadal zone continue their ancient routines, scuttling and swimming and feeding in the darkness, unaware of the significance of the particles they consume, the chemicals they accumulate. To them, the hadal zone is not extreme, but normal, not a frontier, but home, the only environment they have ever known or could survive in. The pressure that would kill us in an instant is, to them, simply the weight of the water, present and unremarkable. Like the pressure of atmosphere on our own skin, unnoticed because it has always been there. The cold is not cold, but temperature. The darkness is not dark, but the natural state of existence. And the scarcity of food, the long waits between meals, the sudden abundances followed by longer emptinesses, is not hardship, but simply the rhythm of life, the pattern that has always existed and always will. And in the quiet of this understanding, we might find something comforting. If life can persist at the bottom of the deepest trenches, under pressures that would crush steel, and in darkness that has never known light, carrying within itself adaptations so subtle they exist only at the molecular level, then perhaps life is not as fragile as we fear. Perhaps the capacity to adapt, to survive, to find ways forward, even in the most extreme conditions, is written more deeply into the nature of living things than we realize. Now, as we prepare to begin our ascent from the deepest places on earth, carrying with us the memory of all the strange creatures we have encountered, it is worth pausing to ask a question that has lingered throughout our descent. Why do these animals disturb us so deeply? They are not dangerous to humans. Most are smaller than our forearms, and even the largest, the giant squid, has never been documented attacking a person. They cannot survive in our world, and we cannot survive in theirs. And yet, when we see photographs of anglerfish with their terrible teeth, or viperfish with jaws that unhinge, or transparent-headed barrel-eye fish with eyes pointing upward inside their skulls, we feel something primal stir within us. Unease, revulsion, fear. These creatures trigger responses in us that seem disproportionate to any actual threat they pose, and understanding why requires us to look not at the creatures themselves, but at our own evolutionary history, at the deep wiring of the human brain, and the ancient fears written into our nervous system, millions of years before we could name or explain them. We are, fundamentally, animals of the light. Our ancestors evolved in sunlit savannas and forests, in environments where vision was the primary sense, where danger that could not be seen was danger that could kill. Our eyes are forward-facing, designed for depth perception, and the precise visual tracking required for complex manipulation and tool use. Our color vision is among the best in the animal kingdom, tuned to distinguish the subtle variations in fruit ripeness, in skin tone that signals health or disease, in the green spectrum where most of our food sources existed. Everything about our sensory architecture is built for a world illuminated by the sun, and as a consequence, darkness triggers one of our oldest and most fundamental fears. In the evolutionary environment, darkness meant vulnerability. Predators hunted at night. Cliffs and hazards became invisible. Social bonds, maintained through visual contact during the day, dissolved in the dark. Our ancestors, who feared the dark, who sought shelter when the sun set, who were cautious in environments where they could not see, survived at higher rates than those who were reckless or indifferent. And so natural selection encoded a wariness of darkness directly into our neurology, creating a fear response that activates automatically when visual information becomes limited or absent. This is why children fear the dark without being taught, why even adults feel unease in complete darkness, why horror films use shadows and dim lighting to create tension. The fear is ancient, pre-verbal, wired so deeply into our brains that conscious reasoning struggles to override it. Deep-sea creatures live in exactly the environment our instincts tell us to fear. They exist in permanent, absolute darkness, In a world where our primary sense would be useless, where we would be blind, helpless, unable to detect threats or navigate or recognize anything familiar. When we see these creatures, even in well-lit photographs, they carry with them the association of that darkness, the knowledge that they are adapted to a world we cannot survive in, a world that represents one of our species' primal fears made geographically real. They are darkness made flesh, embodiments of the very environment that our ancestors learned to avoid. But the fear goes deeper than darkness alone. Many deep-sea creatures exhibit what psychologists call uncanny valley characteristics, features that are almost familiar but distorted in ways that trigger discomfort. The uncanny valley was originally described in robotics, the observation that humanoid robots become more appealing as they approach human appearance, but only up to a point. When they become almost but not quite human, when they are close enough to human that we expect human features, but different enough that those expectations are violated, they become deeply unsettling. The same principle applies to animals. When creatures have features we recognize, eyes, mouths, bodies with bilateral symmetry, but those features are arranged or proportioned in unexpected ways, our pattern recognition systems falter, sending signals that something is wrong, that this is familiar but incorrect, that we are looking at something that breaks the rules our brains use to categorize living things. The anglerfish provides a perfect example. It has a face, or something we interpret as a face. It has eyes, a mouth, structures arranged in configurations our brains automatically process as facial. But the proportions are all wrong. The mouth is too large, occupying most of the head, filled with teeth that angle inward in multiple rows. The eyes are small, almost vestigial compared to the mouth. And that lure, that bioluminescent appendage dangling from the forehead, is a feature that has no equivalent in our experience, something that looks like it was added artificially, like a prosthetic or a parasite rather than a natural part of the animal. We see a face, but a face that is wrong in ways we can sense but struggle to articulate, and that wrongness triggers the uncanny valley response, the instinctive recoil from something that seems diseased, mutated, or otherwise dangerous. Large mouths and prominent teeth are particularly effective triggers because they are threat markers, features our brains have learned to associate with predators. In the evolutionary environment, animals with large mouths relative to their body size were often dangerous, capable of inflicting serious injury with a bite. Animals with visible teeth, especially long or sharp teeth, were even more threatening. These associations are so strong that they persist even when the animal in question is small and objectively harmless. A house cat is not dangerous to an adult human, but when it yawns and displays its teeth, we instinctively register threat, a flicker of recognition that this is a predator built for killing, even if it kills only mice and birds. Deep-sea fish amplify these threat markers to extremes. Their teeth are not just visible, but grotesquely oversized. Their mouths do not just open, but unhinge, creating cavities that seem architecturally impossible. And because these features are so exaggerated, so far beyond the normal range of what we encounter, they register as superstimuli, triggering our threat detection systems more strongly than any predator we might actually encounter on land. Transparency and formlessness trigger a different category of discomfort related to our need for clear boundaries and solid forms. Humans are embodied creatures. We have defined edges, opaque skin that separates inside from outside, a clear distinction between self and not self. When we encounter creatures that violate these boundaries, that are transparent so we can see their internal organs, or gelatinous so they lack defined shapes, or capable of changing form dramatically, like the sea cucumbers that can liquefy their tissues, our brains struggle to process them. They seem incomplete, unfinished, like they are missing something essential. This taps into deep discomfort about bodily integrity, about the violation of boundaries that should be inviolate. We see the heart beating inside a transparent body, and some unconscious part of us recoils because hearts should be hidden, protected, enclosed, not visible to the world. The strangeness of deep sea creatures is amplified by cultural factors, by the accumulated mythology and storytelling of human civilization. For as long as humans have sailed oceans, they have feared what might live beneath the waves. Sea monsters appear in the earliest written records, in ancient Mesopotamian myths, in Greek legends of Scylla and Charybdis, in Norse stories of the Kraken, a squid or octopus large enough to sink ships. These stories were not entirely fantasy. Sailors occasionally encountered giant squid, or fragments of them, corpses floating at the surface or washed ashore after storms. And from these glimpses, they extrapolated monsters of terrifying size and malevolence. When modern science finally photographed living giant squid, when we descended into the deep and found anglerfish and viperfish and all the other strange denizens of the abyss, we found that reality, while different from mythology, was in its way just as unsettling. The ocean itself carries psychological weight. It is the largest habitat on Earth, covering more than 70% of the surface. Yet it remains largely unexplored, largely unknown. The average depth is over 12,000 feet, and we have directly observed only a tiny fraction of the seafloor, mapped it at resolutions far lower than we have mapped the Moon or Mars. This vastness, this unknowability, taps into another fundamental human fear, the fear of the unknown. Our brains are pattern-seeking, prediction-making machines. We are uncomfortable with uncertainty, with spaces that resist our attempts to map and categorize and understand. The ocean, especially the deep ocean, is the largest unknown space on our planet, and the creatures that emerge from it seem to embody that unknowability, that fundamental resistance to our categories and expectations. And now, our journey through the depths is complete. We have descended from the last rays of sunlight, through the twilight where familiar forms begin to change, past the midnight zone where darkness becomes absolute, across the abyssal plains where patience is the only strategy, and down into the hadal trenches where life pushes against the very limits of what is possible. We have met creatures that disturbed us with their strangeness, that challenged our assumptions about what bodies should look like, how predators should hunt, where eyes should be placed, and what it means to be alive in an environment so utterly different from our own. And through understanding their adaptations, their strategies, They're elegant solutions to problems we never face. Perhaps we have learned something not just about them, but about life itself. If this journey has brought you peace or wonder, or simply helped ease you toward sleep, I am grateful you chose to explore with me. The Gentle Scientist exists because of you, because curious minds gather here to learn and rest and appreciate the extraordinary world we share. Please join this community by subscribing, by sharing your thoughts, by returning whenever you need a reminder that the universe is strange and beautiful and full of mysteries worth knowing. Sleep well. Good night.